What is going on, YouTube? Northeast Ohio Sports Cards. Gonna do a little deep dive today. I've been thinking about doing this video for a while. Personal Finance Dad touched on this in his most recent video. I think it was yesterday or the day before. And I was kind of thinking about doing the same thing. He got to it a little bit faster than me, but I kind of wanted to mold it in a little bit more and do a little bit of a deeper dive. So go check out Personal Finance Dad's channel and his videos. He's creeping up on 10K, so maybe we could give him the bump to get him over 10K. I don't think he hit it quite yet. So I'll link to his channel. Check it out when you're done watching this one. So before we get into this, like, comment, sub, YouTube stuff. You guys know the drill. Market Movers links will be down there. All the usual jazz. So let's get into it. So what he touched on and what I had been thinking about as well a lot recently is, has the whole buy in the off-season stuff shifted? I noticed it in the football market. One of my good friends had reached out to me early in the year and kind of had said, hey, I kind of want to get into this sports cards thing. What would be a good thing to jump into? And it was right after the football season. And I said, well, we're heading into football off season. Buy the dip on football quarterbacks if you're willing to just sit and wait until, August to sell them at probably a pretty good profit. And he said, okay. And I kept checking stuff. And I was like, this stuff never dipped. It basically just kept going up right from the season ended. So now we're, into March, almost into April, and there was no football off season. As Personal Finance Dad mentioned, this stuff bottomed out actually in season in a lot of cases, or immediately after the season ended. So I was curious to see if we can find a pattern in this. And one of the big thing that I noted about football last year was, and I've mentioned this video quite a few times on the channel, that I did at the last day of the season. And I ran charts for a bunch of players in the lead up to the season, and they were all green. And then I ran the same charts from the day the season started till the end of the season. And other than, I think I went back 6 to 7 years worth of Prism rookies, I think there was only 3 guys that actually turned a profit if you bought them day one the season started. It was like Josh Allen, Myles Garrett, and I cannot remember the other ones. There was like 2 other guys, and that was it. If you bought at the beginning of the football season, like the week before it started, you were toast. And we've seen the exact same pattern play out in the NBA. So we're going to mix this NBA and football and kind of talk in general. This might be a longer video than normal. The NBA, we saw the same thing. From the time the season ended, late July, August, and last NBA season was a little weird, so this gets a little trickier. Guys dipped for about a week or for a couple weeks. They dipped down and then they ramped up fast. The season started and basically almost every modern player is down from like the week before Christmas through today. Everyone that was green in the 3 months before the season started, and then since then, and it's guys that's played well too, have not cratered, but have gone down quite a bit. So I ran a bunch of charts back, and we're going to kind of dive into them here and see if we could find some patterns. And, once you start looking at stuff, I think we need to really shift when we're buying to sell for the following season. Before it was always quote unquote the off season. And I think the off season's earlier now. I'm not going to touch on it in this video, but we saw it in baseball too. Tatis, Acuna, and Soto, their prices went ballistic right after Christmas. Usually baseball prices don't start going crazy until February, sometimes even late February. Those guys had huge spikes right after Christmas, a month and a half earlier than most people were expecting, and it caught a lot of people off guard. So let's dive in here. I have 2 main examples from the football world for us to look at, and then we're going to look at some basketball examples. I went with Kyler Murray and Patrick Mahomes, and we're going back to 2020, like the entire year of 2020. So let's go back a year. Football season hasn't happened yet. Kyler Murray is the hot thing coming off of his rookie season and gets a ton of love. Patrick Mahomes, proven quantity veteran, best player in the league, just about, et cetera, et cetera. We all know the narrative with Mahomes. So let's start by looking at Kyler's base prism. So this starts back on January 1, 2020. All right. And we're going to see kind of how the market looks like it had shifted. So back on January 1st, or I'm sorry, January 9th is the first entry, because this would have been one of the first few prisms graded. This is about a $100 card. It jumps around a little bit, but it's basically a $100 to $150 card. Dives down, goes back up again, 140, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, right here is the first inflection point. It's sitting still in that 150 range. What happens here that causes this big spike? DeAndre Hopkins signing. Jumps it up almost $100. It peaks up, and what happens that we see a lot, these things overprice, and then they pull back. So it jumped up to 330, comes back down again, spikes back up, flattens out, and now we start the long run up to the football season. So right here-ish, back in late March, so basically where we were right now, this was a $300 card, let's call it. As we move through the summer, it gets up to about 350, 360, 370, 325. Let's just call it 350. Okay. This is July. 4th of July happens and people go, football season's coming. I better start buying football. So these people are diving in here. Football starts getting the love 4th of July. Meanwhile, if you bought as soon as the season ended, right when it first came out, you were paying $100 a pop. Now they're going for $330. You could sell into this rise, but you're not going to do that yet. All right, football market heats up. It spikes again. Goes up to $475. Sits at about $475, $500. Spikes again, and again. And then we're off to the races because now we're in July into August. And now we're up until the season starts. I ran this chart up until the day the season started of Thursday Night Football. So it gets up all the way to 820, 840, 770. So the ending average is 770. So this card started off the year at 115 and ends at 770 for the entire run, with a big spike from the Hopkins and then a whole bunch of hobby love all the way up to there. All right. Let's look to see what happened from the day the season started till the day the season ended. This happened. And by the way, that was a 569% increase. The day the season started, he was $770. If you remember, Kyler Murray looked fantastic the first few weeks of the season. This card spiked up to $1,100. Then, if you remember, Kyler went into the tank and the Cardinals started to suck. And this dropped all the way down to $525, then dropped more to $400, and then dropped more to $377, and basically bottomed out at about $365, $350. Here's a $333. So let's call it $350. This is December, 3.5 months ago. So it ended the football season at $365. That's where it was almost way back in March of last year. All of this, and this peak, gone. Just gone. Right back, reset button all the way back to March. And think of Kyler, like I said, was the hottest player in the football market last year. Now let's look at what's happened since the season ended until today. All right, season ended, $365 card, the last day of the season, or basically January 1st. I think I ran this. Yeah, I just ran it through the end of the year. $365 card. Where is it now? It's sitting, the ending average is $525. So it's gone up 43% in 3 months. So we are right here, which on this chart, well, let me just go to this. This is the whole year. We are right at this point right here, basically. 3 something. It's a little bit higher than that now. It's 525. So it's actually at this price point almost already, where it was in July, late July of last year. So it has already spiked back up well over its low point. So this chart here is showing January 1st, 2020, all the way through March 29th, 2021. So once again, this is the whole thing blown out. I was showing it to you guys in sections. So you could see the early run up in the off season. Then this from March to July is I'm just going to kind of sit there. It gets a little buzz here because what do we have here? The NFL off season. Free agency, moves, trades, etc. And then if something happened, you could see a bump around the draft. Cardinals didn't do much at the draft because they traded their picks for Hopkins. So, this is here, and then this is the ramp up to football season. And then projecting forward now, Kyler drops down in season. The best time to buy Kyler was actually at the end of last season. Now, they didn't make the playoffs. They were close, but they didn't make the playoffs. We're going to see something a little bit different when we look at Mahomes here in a second. So the best time to actually buy Kyler Murray, the cheapest point you could have got, if you missed all this, and at Christmas time, basically when the NBA season's starting, if you went, what should I be buying right now? It was actually Kyler Murray. You could have got in for around 320, let's call it 350. You could have got in for 350, and today you'd be up almost $200. And God knows where this goes between now and the actual start of the NFL season. In the past, you would always wait to buy until right after the season. That couple month period, the season would end, then it would drop down. Now, I think you should actually be buying the next sport when that one starts, depending on how it lines up. It's not going to be perfect because the sports don't overlap equally. But essentially, when basketball season is starting, and this is weird this year because the season started late, basically week 16 of the NFL season, anyone not making the playoffs, you should be buying. Playoff teams are a different story because those guys are going to get bump ups in the playoffs. But guys that aren't in the playoffs, we need to be looking at in week 15, 16, 17. So can the same thing be said for the NBA? So let's fast forward. We're almost to the NBA playoffs. So right before the season ends, and in that beginning portion of the NBA playoffs, should we be buying the young stars that are not in the playoffs? The first guy that jumps to my mind is SGA. He has a ton of potential. He's going to get a ton of hype going into next season. He's hurt right now. And no one's going to be thinking about buying SGA. They're going to be all looking at the playoff guys, football, and the heart of baseball season. Like I said, this is the old mentality that people used to apply, buy in the offseason, sell at the beginning of the season, but I think it's shifted a little bit. Let's look at Mahomes. So this is the preseason chart on Mahomes. Once again, going all the way back to January 2020, we see almost the identical pattern. Slow build up. We don't see the big spike until here, and this is when he signed his contract extension, I believe. It jumped almost at the exact same time. Once again, right when the NFL offseason starts, when the new league year starts, he signed his contract extension. Gets a bump. Just like Kyler did. Got a bump. Then we come over to here. It ramps up. Flattens back out again. Shoots to the moon again. And then dips down a little bit. So he started the offseason, by the way. What the hell were we all thinking not buying Patrick Mahomes last year? Oh, and I went with his Optic PSA 10. Sorry. I did not use his Prism because the Prism Silvers are super low pop count and they're astronomically expensive. So I went with something a little bit more common. These were $200 last year. $145 last January. Whoops. When the season started, they were going for $1,300. Let's look at his in season. Even the great Patrick Mahomes started the season off at 13, let's just call it 1,400. Come Thanksgiving, 868. $868. Here's where the difference matters on the playoff teams versus the non-playoff teams. Kyler stayed flat. Let's look at Kyler's chart. This is actually, he was still dropping down because they weren't playing well. This is about where they were eliminated from the playoffs. He dipped down to the next level and flattened out. Mahomes, the Chiefs started to look like the machine that they were, started to get buzz for the playoff run. And then look what happened to him. He takes off. And then this is the day of the Super Bowl. 2-7 is the day of the Super Bowl. Gets all the way up to $3,000. So you could have bought here for $800 and sold for $3,000 the week of the Super Bowl. Or let's call it $2,600. Sorry, $3,000 is a little bit of an overestimation. So he bottomed out once again late into the season, into the malaise of the late NFL season, the 3-quarter pull, and then shot up. Now, obviously, if they don't make the Super Bowl, this is a little inflated because of that. But say they get eliminated 2 week in the AFC Championship game, it still gets up to $2,000. Even still, the start of the playoffs, right around Christmas when the season ended, it was a $1,600 card. You could have doubled your money if you bought it just a month earlier. Okay, so he spikes all the way up to $2,700. Then what happens? They lose the Super Bowl. Ooh, whoop. Drops all the way down to $1,950. Literally the next day, people go, that's too cheap. It goes back up to $2,000. And it's basically been bouncing around $1,900 to $2,000 since. So he's actually still been flat since he got eliminated from the Super Bowl, or since he lost the Super Bowl. It dipped down. Your actual cheapest price was March 6th at $1,760. And like I said, it's been bouncing down. It kind of goes a little bit below 2,000, bounces up to 2,000. Typically, when I see this, that tells me we're basically at the bottom, especially over a 3-month period like that. People are not letting it drop much below 1,700. As soon as it starts creeping around 1,800, they're like, start buying it up. Let's transition this over to basketball. Oh, I'm sorry. Here's the Mahomes full year chart. So this is going back to January 1st all the way through our current date today in late March. So once again, you can see the full run up, the huge spike right before the season starts. We begin the season, dip down in season, bottoms out at 860, spikes all the way back up to 2,700, immediately loses almost $700 in value, and now is just kind of flattened out at around 2,000. Kind of dipped down here a little bit and looks like it's almost on its way back up. Based off what I'm seeing here, if you want a Mahomes optic, I'd buy now and buy fast because your window is probably closing quickly. Now let's look at basketball. Luka and Zion, the two kings of the last 2 rookie classes. PSA 10 base prisms. These charts are running from early January all the way through today. We are going to see a very similar pattern. Now, you're going to say, but there was no NBA offseason. But there was. I am counting the gap from the day the NBA closed in mid-March to when they came off for the bubble as an NBA offseason, because it was. You just didn't have a transaction period, but you had an offseason. So we've actually almost had 2 NBA offseasons, at least for the playoff guys. All right. Beginning of January, card prices are ticking along, and these prices are going to seem cute. Zion was selling for more than Luka. Zion PSA 10 Prism back in February 13th, $307. Sit down for this one. A Luka base Prism last January, $235. Whoops. Interesting thing, people talk about COVID being the main reason for the bubble to take off in the sports card market, and I'm sure that it helped, but we actually see here, look at these prices jump in early March. COVID hadn't happened yet. I mean, it had happened overseas, but we weren't thinking about it here yet. Here's Zion peaking at $880 and Luka peaking at $600 right before the season shuts down. Season shuts down, there's a drop period. Zion drops down to $500, Luka drops down to $400. Then what happens? Now we are in the NBA offseason. I'm air quoting. You can't see me, but I'm air quoting. All right, we have a nice long run up. This is where things start getting wild. Right here at the end of July. So on July 30th, Luka was going for 1,100. Zion was going for 860. Remember back here in March at the bottom? Zion 500, Luka 400. So Luka's almost tripled. Zion's almost doubled. NBA playoffs start. Luka to the moon. Zion's out to the basement. It becomes readily apparent the Mavs are not going to beat the Clippers. Luka's prices start to pull back. Then what happens? Luka smashes the game winner. Boop, back up. And then immediately back down because they get eliminated. And then he bottoms out. So they get eliminated. It's right around here. I don't forget the exact date. I think it's this 8/24, right around here. Within 2 weeks, he bottoms out at 9/10. Zion's peak was almost $1,000. He bottoms out around here, basically anywhere in September or October. He bottoms out. Now we're in the run up to next season. You can see Luka was only at the bottom for maybe a month. Things flattened for a month and then immediately started shooting back up again. You can see the charts, they go almost follow each other. Start going up, going up, going up. Here we are right before Christmas. The season starts. Drops back down, little spike, back down. Luka's been on a straight downward trend. Zion's been on a straight downward trend. What does this look like from here to here? Looks a lot like this Kyler Murray chart. So, following logic, right around now or very quickly is when we should be buying non-playoff NBA players for next season. So put your list together and get ready. Right before the playoffs start, I think is going to be the best time to buy those guys. After they're eliminated, I would say give it a solid couple weeks, and then you need to be watching like a hawk. Buying football, I think you could still buy football now for the next few months and be okay. You've missed out on the bottom, though. If you haven't bought football yet, you've missed out on the bottom. And then, like I've advocated on the channel for a while, the second football season starts, right before football season starts in August, you need to be selling. Get out of it. The only way I would hold is if it was someone that has not seen a big jump in prices. That was what happened to Josh Allen last year. Josh Allen did not get a lot of preseason buzz. His prices didn't get that high. Then he balled out in season and his prices went nuts because he hadn't seen the bump already. Mahomes went down and he was playing fantastic until he got the playoff bump. And we are literally seeing the identical thing right now. Here's another example. This is Ja and Trey. We're not going to do a deep dive here, but you can see the exact same pattern. Lead up to March, they spike. COVID hits, they go down. Then they slowly start going up, going up, going up. They both spike right before the NBA playoffs. Now, Trey was not actually in the bubble or in the playoffs, but Trey got a lot of love because everyone else was selling for astronomical values and Trey hadn't shot up yet. And everyone's like, if this guy's selling for this much, Trey should be selling for this much. And he got a big run up. And then both guys dropped off. Once again, it took about a month. Mid-September into early October is where things flattened out. Trae Young got a huge pump. Ja, a little less so. Trae Young jumped down again. This was from all the off-season signings right here. Dropped down again. Then the actual season starts. Right before the season starts, Trae gets another huge run-up along with Ja. Look, they go hand in hand. Ja gets hurt, drops down a little more dramatically, comes back, pops a couple big games, jumps back up again. But then you could see they immediately drops back down again, and they're in lockstep. Look at the December through, or January 1st through now is straight down. If we run this back to, let me do January 1 through today, down 40%, down 50%. Let's do, when did the season start? About 12/22. Luka down 40%, Zion down 30%. What does this look like? This Kyler chart right here. Season starts, season ends. Now we're not at the end of the NBA season yet. Down 50%. Now, if Kyler makes the playoffs, this looks like a different story. It probably looks more like this, depending on how far that he goes. So what does all this mean? I think we need to change our buying and selling habits. And unless you're really into the player for the ultra long term, or it's a spec play, but these proven middle of the road guys, and I say that very loosely, you know, your Trays, your Jaws, even your Tatums, basically anyone that gets pumped before the season starts, you should be selling before the season started, unless it's someone that you think is an ultra long-term hold. And even then, maybe we should be selling. If they get a huge run up before the season starts, just sell them at the beginning of the season. Odds are it's going to come back down again. And almost even Patrick Mahomes came down. You could have sold Patrick Mahomes right when the season started, made a profit, bought him back 10 weeks later, and then sold him again another 6 weeks later. You know, we talk about long-term holds a lot and short-term holds. Maybe there is no such thing as a long-term hold anymore. I had the class of Luka, Giannis, Tatum, Morant, and Trae Young prior to the season starting as my long-term holds. Hold these guys through multiple seasons. I think that was wrong. I think we should have been, you know, in a lot of these cases, maybe you can, you know, carve out some, but even Luka, I could have sold Luka back here. If I didn't have a PSA 10 Prism, but I have a BGS 9.5 True Gem and some other stuff. Say I had a PSA 10 Prism, I could have sold it back here for 2,000 if I bought into it earlier in the offseason for less. And guess what? I could buy it back now for $1,100. And you want to know my sneaking suspicion? One, if they make the playoffs, you'll be able to sell it for a profit. Again, if you buy now at 1,100 and they make, I mean, they're probably going to make the playoffs. They might get into the play-in game. Like they might get into the play-in game and might have to play their way into the playoffs. We'll see. Regardless, if you bought Luka right now for 1,100 and you fell into a coma and woke up next October 31st, usually the season starts around Halloween. I can't imagine a world unless the whole cookie crumbles. And I'm not speaking Luka Prism specifically, just Luka. If you want to buy Select, Optic, whatever, because they all follow the same patterns. And sold it, woke up at Halloween, I think you could easily make 30, 40, 50%. Sell it right before the season starts. Let the season do its thing. Maybe he comes out like gangbusters. They do a bunch of stuff and he looks like the front runner for the NBA MVP. And maybe he doesn't fall off. Mahomes looked like the NFL MVP for most of the season. He fell off. Just saying. If Mahomes can drop that much in season, then anyone can. Because he's about the safest thing that there is when it comes to football. So I really think we need to adjust how we approach everything. Really. I really do. And I've been saying it for, I put the hammer down on this for football. Do not carry football in the season. Maybe we need to start thinking about the same for basketball. You know, I did a very similar video to the football one prior to the NBA season starting. I ran charts on like 8 years worth of rookie classes. I forget what video it is. It's somewhere on the channel right before the season starts. And I cherry picked guys that had not gone up in value yet, had not seen huge spikes. Like Trae Young had seen a huge spike. John Morant had seen a huge spike. Luka, Zion, all those guys had seen huge spikes. Guess who hadn't? Jaylen Brown, Joel Embiid, the Joker, Donovan Mitchell were some of them. I forget who else was on that list. Guess what those guys have done? Spiked. Why? Because they didn't get a run up in season and they played well. It takes two things to tango, but you get the point. So, and football, like I said, was kind of the same way. That was a lot trickier because most guys did not go up in season. Josh Allen was the one outlier because of how good he played and how much of a non-factor his prices were during the run up to the season. So I'm to the point now where, look, going into next basketball season and football season, anyone that gets huge price increases, like all-star level players, it might make sense to unload your entire portfolio. Rake in the cash, keep your spec guys, your Kevin Porter Jr.'s, your Darius Baisleys, the guys that you're into for $5 or $10, and see what happens with them that you're into for nothing and you're just waiting for them to pull a Taylor Horton Tucker or Bull. Like guys like that, sure, ride those into the season because you're expecting, they haven't seen big price increases yet, most likely. And you're just waiting for them to have a week's worth of good games and then sell the high. But these guys that get huge price increases prior to the season, dump a couple weeks before the season, and then you could just buy them back. That's the theory here. I think you could just buy them back. For whatever reason, this is the way the market works now. And maybe it's always been like this, but it's just never been this extreme where it's been this swingy in and out of seasons. And I can tell you right now, the other thing that's going to happen is people are going to start selling earlier. If people catch on to this, like you watch this football season, I wouldn't be surprised if it actually drops a little bit before the season starts. Prices start going down because people are going to want to unload certain stuff. You need to keep that in mind with anything. Everyone always says, oh, well, hold the guy because he's going to be in the Western Conference Finals. If you hear everyone giving that advice, sell a week earlier. Because guess what everyone's doing? Holding until the Western Conference Finals or whatever magical date every YouTuber and Instagrammer is throwing out there, myself probably included. Whatever they're all telling you, target the week before. You're better off to sell too early. You'd rather sell a week too early than a week too late, let me tell you. Because when this stuff tanks, it tanks fast. So that's all I got for you guys today. Let me know your thoughts down below. Like I said, Personal Finance Dad talked about this a little bit before me. Like I said, I've been thinking about doing it, but I wanted to do a more data deep dive and do a lot of comparisons here. Sorry, this is a much longer video than normal. We're probably well north of 30 minutes. So, but yeah, let me know your guys' thoughts. Am I crazy here? Should we be offloading most of our sport prior to that sport starting? That's why I talked about in, I forget what video it was, just a week or two ago. I said, should we be selling Tatis, Soto, and Acuna right now? And people in the comments were like, you're freaking nuts. Are you kidding me right now? I'm not saying you can't buy them back. I'm saying, should we sell now? A Soto Chroma is almost $500. What's that look like in 4 weeks, 5 weeks, 6 weeks? Could you sell it today for $600 and buy it back again in $400, $300? If he has a slow start to the season, those are high pop count cards. They drop in price fast. And spinning the thing forward, do we need to be buying baseball like at Thanksgiving, Christmas? It started this year at Christmas. Does that mean next year people are going to get ahead of it even more and start between Thanksgiving and Christmas? You should almost be buying baseball and football at the same time. Basketball, it's hard because we don't have solid data because we haven't had a real off season yet. We had the COVID break. I'm counting that as a fake off season. And then we had the other off season, but like the real off season, but that was an accelerated off season. Basketball season had hardly ended, and then we were immediately into the whole off season cycle again. It basically started immediately. So that was kind of weird. We don't have like a great data. That's why I use the football comparison, because we have the most run up with that. And it was the two sports. Football was the sport that was least affected by COVID because they had their full normal off season and they had a full season of games that were not disrupted by the schedule. I mean, some wild shit happened, but you get my point. So anyway, like, comment, subscribe. Hope you guys stuck with this whole video. And like I said, if you're not subscribed to Personal Finance Dad, go check him out. Let's get him over 10K. That's all I got for you guys. Catch you on the next one. Peace.